Greetings, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are. So, over this next week, a lot of you will notice a change in the upload schedule for Back to Ashes. This is due in part because I am having surgery next week. So, I am trying to release as many videos as possible so all of you all will not be left high and dry with your vocal melatonin, and you won't have to go back and re-listen to videos while I'm in recovery. Also, I'm going ahead to pre-record ahead of time videos that will be on scheduled releases while I'm in recovery. The surgery that I'm having is going to keep me in bed, and I will be sleeping a lot and won't have time to sit in the studio to get these stories recorded. So thank you for your patience, and thank you so much for understanding. As well, I'm going to go ahead and apologize, which I know a lot of you are going to tell me you don't need to apologize, but that's the type of person I am. If I, for any reason, do not get back to you in the comments, that is because I am in recovery. The painkillers I will be on after surgery will keep me pretty loopy and sleepy, so I would rather wait until I am completely healed and sober-minded before I comment back to you all, as I don't want you all laughing, or I don't want to accidentally say something to you that I don't remember saying. So with that being said, you all will still be able to get your stories. Now, a lot of you still call me Back to Ashes. Please call me Phoenix. That's what I prefer to go by. If you still want to call me Back to Ashes, that's absolutely fine. Also remember, down in the description below, if you would like to and you enjoy what you are hearing, you can buy me a coffee. That helps me out greatly, and it helps the channel out as well. It is time to go back to ashes, for when we arise from the ashes, we are a better, bigger, stronger, and happier person in the morning. Sit back, relax, or tuck in and get warm, and prepare for your dose of vocal melatonin entitled True Creepy Encounters. This has stayed with me my whole life and still creeps me out to think about it. I grew up in an apartment complex on the very edge of town. We had a 3-floor apartment on the first floor. There were a lot of single mothers that lived in the complex, and the complex was fairly isolated. I shared a bedroom with my sister, and my mother had her own room. It was very quiet at night, so you could hear things clearly with the windows open. It was surrounded by corn and soybean fields, so some nights you could only hear crickets and the rustling of leaves in the field. And then, some nights, you would hear the creeper. It was always late at night. You'd hear boot steps walking down the sidewalk from one of the buildings on the far end of the parking lot, walking slowly down the pavement. Then, the rustle of feet and grass walking up the lawn to our window, and we'd see a shadow. It would just stand there, and occasionally he would scratch a finger across the screen. I was around 11 or 12, and my sister was 14. We'd be terrified. Then there would be rustling, and he'd go to my mother's window, and eventually he'd wander off. We tried switching rooms, and he'd know which rooms were the new ones. We called the police, notified management, but the response was pretty minimal. And we knew who it was. There was a guy who lived in one of the nearby windows who was always washing his car and would just stare at the young girls and women while he worked on his car. He always worked shirtless and wore cowboy boots, and he was so creepy looking. He'd literally wear only a Speedo and his boots, and he did not have the body for it. I'd be skateboarding and he'd just watch me in the most predatory fashion. He scared the ever-living hell out of me. This went on for years, and we found out other women and girls were being visited as well. He never went to an apartment where there was a grown man or even an elder boy living there. Only single moms and their daughters. When I hit my teen years, I wanted to go out with a bat, but my mother wouldn't let me. He eventually moved away and it stopped. I always wonder if it ever escalated with him and he actually physically harmed someone. To this day, I can't watch movies where a woman is pursued by a silent killer, Halloween-type movies. There was something about the predatory silence of it all that was pretty petrifying. For the weekend, I wanted to visit my boyfriend. He lives 2 hours away, and I always go by train. I'm not easily spooked, but I always keep an eye out. A girl gotta do what a girl's gotta do, am I right? 1 hour into the trip, it was around 2000 hours then. I see 2 men getting in the same train compartment as me. I was sitting in a 2-seat. The seat next to me was empty, and in front of me, there was a seat for 4 people. So, 2 pairs of seats facing each other. The men came in being very loud, even though it was a silent compartment. But nobody said anything because they already seemed very suspicious. From the moment they stepped onto the train, probably before they got in, they had their eyes fixated on me. They stepped in through the doors and sat in the seat right in front of me, the 4-seater. And from then on, they kept an eye on me, while discussing things with each other in a language I did not understand. Like every other girl, I get stared at frequently, especially when I wear my hair down. It probably makes me feel a bit awkward, but I never feel unsafe when this happens. Until yesterday. But they were staring at me in every way possible. Through the chairs, standing up, sitting down, and bending over to get a good look. Through the reflection of the mirror, and by getting up and walking past me. They were taking turns and walking over to the other compartment of the train. The other compartment was only separated from mine with a glass door. Every time one of them got up, they both started staring at me. Then, one of them went away, and the other one had clear vision of me and kept staring at me. He poked his head through the middle of the seats and offered me chocolate, which I politely refused. Then, the other one came back, and 5 minutes later, the man who did not go away yet went away in the same way. They kept taking turns and walking away. And every time one of them got up, the one who remained seated kept an eye on the other, and on me. Each time they were sitting across from each other, they discussed things, but I could not translate it. They kept looking at me and then started discussing again. When I had 20 minutes of my trip left, a lot of people got out at one stop. It was just me, them, and one other male then. The moment the doors were about to close, one of the creepy men started walking through the doors to check if there were people coming in, and maybe to check if there was security. I don't know why he did it, but when he came back, he scanned the train to see how many people were still on there, I think. From that moment on, they both got in seats facing me. They would not stop staring at this point. As you can imagine, I panicked and was stressed the F out. So, I slowly turned around to look behind the glass doors to see if there were more people there that could maybe help me. And to my luck, there were more people there. So I slowly and very softly put on my jacket. We still had more than 10 minutes left then. And I kid you not even 2 minutes later, one of the men starts getting dressed too. He took his purse and his jacket and kept looking at me and fixating on me while still discussing with the other man. This was where I really panicked. I also let my friends know what was going on, and my boyfriend was already at the train stop where I was supposed to get out. Then I contemplated what the smartest thing to do was, because there is an emergency number on the train that you can call or text if you feel unsafe. But I had a gut feeling that this would not help me. So I got my bags, got up, and walked through the glass doors to the other compartment. I sat facing them so I could see what they were doing. They both got up and grabbed their bags and started walking towards me. Mind you, they were sitting closest to the exit, so there was absolutely no reason for them to take this route too. I rapidly started to talk to someone on the seats next for mine and ask if he could help me, because I was getting followed and watched by two grown men. He said he also thought that they were very suspicious and was getting scared for me. He asked me to sit next to him so he could keep me a little safer and distract the men or something. Then he distracted me a little and asked me questions about my life. When the two creeps saw I got seated next to that man, they were already coming my way and were making their way through the doors of the compartment. They were glass doors, so we could see each other very clearly. I had not shown my fear, but I was shaking so uncontrollably that they must have seen how scared I was. The moment they got through the door, they saw me getting seated next to the other man, and the creeps exchanged looks, looked at me, discussed something, looked at me again, turned around and went the other way. They were walking to the exit of the train, where, again, is a glass door. So, we could still see each other. The whole time they were standing around the exit, they were looking at me with a very creepy and disturbed look on their faces. I describe it as, you got away, but you won't be lucky next time. That's how it felt. The man I was sitting next to also got the hang of this and was calming me down. He told me he was not going to let me get off the train by myself and would wait with me until my boyfriend would arrive. That was so amazing, and I felt comforted. But then our stop came, and we walked to our side of the exit, and then came a realization. In the exit of the train, there were standing two other men with the same kind of looks as the two creeps. They talked the same language, and they acted weird too. These men were probably the men who the two creeps visited every few minutes. The men at the exit saw me, looked at me with a creepy look, but then the man who kept me safe made sure to them that he walked with me, and immediately they looked away. They also covered their faces with their hoods. The doors opened, and they nearly sprinted out of there, just as the other two creeps did. Then, the man who escorted me out waited with me until we found my boyfriend, and then he went on his way. We both could not thank him enough for keeping me safe. I thought I lived in a very safe country in Europe, but I think as long as you're a young woman on your own, you will never be 100% safe while traveling or being alone. I hate thinking about what would have happened if I had not been helped by the man in the other department. I wish I could have thanked him with gifts or a nice gesture, but I don't know his name and will probably never see him again. To the man who saved me, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. To all of you listening to this, I really hope you stay safe. Just be on the lookout for each other and help someone when you can. Thank you for listening to my story. About an hour ago, my manager and I were closing shift at a store in my small town in the north, off the main road and across rent-controlled apartments. I was waiting at the register, as usual, and watching people come in around 10 minutes before close, watching who came in so that I could make sure that they left. There was a guy that came in after a girl that I randomly hyper-fixated on. He walked down the main aisle towards the bathrooms and went out of sight. I didn't know why, but I wanted to make sure he left. Customer after customer came and went. The ones I saw come in. But 5 minutes to closing time, he never left. My manager went to the bathroom, and I stayed by the register until she came out and went to the office. I walked around the few aisles in the front towards the door and didn't see him. My manager came out and wanted to buy some things right before we were supposed to close. I told her that I saw a guy come in, but didn't see him leave. I felt really uncomfortable and disturbed, and thought it was just because I'd been listening to the insanely creepy podcast, The Black Tapes. But after she checked the whole store, and then I went around and checked with her, we saw that he'd left a basket. We went into the office after I grabbed my stuff, and we checked the cameras several times. We saw him home in. We watched the cameras again, forwards and backwards, every camera, outside and inside, right by the exit and incoming door. He never left. We decided to leave after about half an hour and called our general manager. I never saw him leave. The cameras never recorded him leaving. I've been terrified since it just happened. We never found out what happened to that man, and now I'm terrified to go back to work. Me and my ex-girlfriend visited St. Thomas for a vacation about 4 to 5 years ago. My dad paid for the trip as a graduation present to me. When we arrived, we realized we were the youngest guests by about 10 to 15 years, as the vacation was all-inclusive and probably too expensive for more college grade-aged people. On the shuttle over to the resort, we struck up a conversation with a sketchy-looking couple. The man was in his mid-50s to 60s, very Irish-looking, with faded tattoo sleeves covering his scrawny arms. His girlfriend was 15 years his junior and was overweight with needle marks on her wrists and a streak of blue in her dark hair, if I remember correctly. I found it curious that they were also traveling with a 12-year-old Hispanic girl. Shortly after arriving to the hotel, we realized that we were rooming directly next to them, with neighboring first-floor patios. My girlfriend was instantly spooked by the couple and told me to avoid them at all costs. The older guy would be smoking joints on his patio every time I came outside and would offer hits to me, which I found hard to resist, as I had been looking for some weed on the trip. My girlfriend found out, and it became the source of several arguments during the trip. After about 4 days into the trip, the guy started opening up to me saying, "I don't mind telling you any of this because I'll probably never see you again after this trip." He told me that he was an OG, or a retired gangster, who used to sell illegal firearms to criminal organizations. In his prime, he said he was making upwards of $10,000 to $20,000 a month. I've always been very interested in sketchy or dark stories, which is why I write so many of these stories. I acted very natural when he told me this, and I think it emboldened him. He later told me that he had kidnapped for ransom. Before back in Forest Hills, Massachusetts, where his gang operated out of. I, too, am from Massachusetts and know how dangerous and crime-ridden of a city it is. During a separate conversation with his girlfriend, he explained that her son had asked her to drive a large quantity of heroin from Massachusetts to Rhode Island. She was pulled over, searched, and arrested, eventually being charged with transporting drugs over state lines and serving multiple years in prison. As if things couldn't get sketchier, I asked about the girl they had with them, and he explained that the girl's dad was involved in a triple homicide during a motorcycle road rage dispute, or something to that nature. She claimed that he was framed, but this woman didn't appear to be the most credible source. After the girl's father received multiple life sentences without parole, they offered to adopt her. Part of me thought this was wholesome, as the girl appeared to be having fun during the trip, but it also filled me with an overwhelming sense of sadness and pity, as her legal guardians were drunk off their asses for 90% of the trip. I never saw them again after the trip, but I did take a picture of them during a boat ride that I could probably find in my camera roll, if any of you are interested. I sincerely hope that girl is happy and being properly taken care of. The whole story is really rather grim. I don't blame my girlfriend for getting upset at me for interacting with him, but I guess my morbid curiosity always gets the best of me. I've had a few creepy things happen to me in my life, but this one I still think about, how things could have went wrong very fast. I'm a 20-year-old female. This takes place back when I used to live in southern Indiana. Like seriously, in the sticks. It was a weekend night, and my best friend and I were coming home after our graveyard shift at a local waffle joint. she decided to get her dog from her house so we could stay at my place for the night. That's important later. So, we start heading out into the country where I live. And to get to my house, there's a long, narrow dirt road you have to go down. About a mile in or so, we see a truck's headlights. We get closer, and it's a nice truck. Probably like a 2018 at least. I can't say I don't know much about cars. Leave me alone. He's parked to where he's sideways, blocking the whole path. Confused, I get out and ask if he's okay. He looked hopeful when he saw me at first. I'm just waiting on a friend to come get me. My truck's stuck. He smiled at me, and I noticed his pupils were nearly completely dilated. He looks back to my car and sees that I have someone with me, and he looks at the dog sticking his head out the window. His smile fades. He says, "Pit bulls are mean and nasty." He quickly turns around and gets back in his truck. I go back to my friend and I'm like, put this shit in reverse and use whatever hood race skills you have to get us the hell out of here. We take my poor 95 Caddy that really shouldn't be driving on a dirt road anyway, and back all the way up down that road and get back on the main road. Relieved, we take a different road home. Then, lo and behold, the same guy is parked on that road, standing off to the side smiling, just looking into our headlights. We were completely about to crap ourselves, and we gunned it the rest of the way home. I don't know how he got there before us or what his intentions were, but I'm thankful I wasn't alone being my naive college girl self. I'm a 23-year-old guy and was driving home from a late night shift at work when my car ran out of gas. I was in the middle of nowhere with no cell phone reception and no other cars in sight. The only thing around was a sketchy gas station up ahead, and I knew I had no choice but to go there for help. As I walked into the gas station, I immediately felt a sense of unease. The store was dimly lit, and the air was thick with the smell of gasoline. The only person inside was an old man behind the counter. He looked up at me with cold, piercing eyes. "Can I help you?" he asked in a gravely voice. "Yeah, my car ran out of gas," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Do you have a gas can or something I could use?" The old man nodded and disappeared into the back room, leaving me alone in the store. I looked around, feeling increasingly nervous. The shelves were stocked with dusty, outdated products, and there was a strange, eerie feeling in the air. As I waited for the old man to return, I heard a faint sound coming from the back room. It sounded like someone whispering, but I couldn't make out what they were saying. Suddenly, the old man emerged from the back room, holding a gas can in his gnarled hands. He handed it to me, and I quickly filled it up with gas from the pump outside. But as I turned to leave, the old man grabbed my arm and looked at me with his cold, piercing eyes. "You be careful out there," he said in a low voice. "There's something in these woods that ain't right. Something that'll get you if you're not careful." I tried to shake off his grip and make a run for it, but he held on tight. "You'll need this," he said, shoving a rusty old knife into my hand. "For protection." I bolted out of the gas station, feeling like something was following me. As I got into my car and drove away, I could hear strange noises coming from the woods around me. It sounded like something was scratching at the windows, trying to get in. I drove as fast as I could, trying to put as much distance between me and that creepy gas station as possible. And as I looked back in the rearview mirror, I saw something moving in the darkness behind me. Something that looked like a person, but wasn't quite human. I never went back to that gas station again, and I never forgot the eerie feeling that had crept over me that night. This happened to me when I was 16, and I was living in India. I'm a female. I was studying in pre-university, which is an intermediate level between high school and university. My college was in a safe and affluent area, and I never felt unsafe there. I used to walk with my friends every evening after classes to a bus stop, which was a couple of kilometers away, to take the bus home. The day this happened, I had to do some extra lab work, and I was alone since it was late. It was almost 6 p.m. when I reached the bus stop. I looked around to see a middle-aged man sitting on the bench in the bus stop. There was nothing weird or sketchy about him. I stood a few meters in front of him while I waited for my bus. After a few minutes, he got up and came and stood near me, such that I could now see him in my peripheral vision. I felt uncomfortable since I felt his eyes checking me out. He had a small bag with him, and I saw him take out a small book from it. He kept looking at me and at the book in his hand. What happened next still makes me sick to my stomach. He suddenly came in front of me and was standing such that I could now see what was in that book. It was a book full of pornographic pictures, and he even took out a few more posters from his bag to show them off to me. Soon, he started saying things to himself like, "Wow, this is so good." I was frozen in fear and now prayed with all my might for my bus to arrive. I even considered waving down a rickshaw to take me home, but there were none. I was sweating bullets and was stuck to the spot. Finally, after what felt like ages, a bus came up. I ran to the bus even before it stopped and scrambled onto it. I willed for it to move quickly and for the man to not get into it. Thankfully, he didn't, and I just sank down with relief. The rest of the journey home was a blur, and I remember coming home and throwing up. I've had many creepy, inappropriate encounters since, but this one still bothers me. Maybe because I was so naive and young, and this came out of the blue. I don't know. I hope no other young girl was traumatized by that disgusting man. A few months ago, my girlfriend and I were on the drive back home from a late-night concert at about 1 a.m. We were basically in the middle of nowhere, and I decided to pull off at a random rest stop. to use the bathroom. I figured at this time, the only people at this place would just be truckers and other people in the same situation as myself. I got out of my car and walked up to the building, and as soon as I stepped inside, there were a few weird things that I noticed. So this place was laid out with 2 men's rooms and 2 women's rooms and 2 vending machines, one in both corners on each side of the restroom doors. When I walked in, there were 2 people, both of them standing directly in front of each vending machine, both just staring at the vending machines, not reaching to get money or actually intending on buying something. So, I walked past these people and went into the first men's room. I walked inside, and I was the only person in this room using the urinals, which were laid out in a U shape. A few seconds later, someone else walks in, an older guy, maybe like 50 or 60, working class looking guy, and he walked over and started using the urinal right behind me, about a few feet away. Nothing about this was very alarming at first, but being the careful person that I am, I already have my pocket knife open in my hand in my front hoodie pocket. Once I finish up, I go wash my hands and walk out the door to the first restroom. As I walk out, I realize that I also had to take a crap, so to avoid being awkward, I walked into the second men's room, taking note that these weird vending machine people were in the exact same spot. I go into the first stall and try to go about my business when I hear someone else walk into the restroom and go into the stall right beside mine. Keep in mind, these were about 6 other open stalls away from mine. I thought this was very weird, so I looked down and immediately recognized the work boots as the guy from the first bathroom. This guy just walked in, and I wasn't even in there for 2 minutes. I immediately got up and left that bathroom. I started speed walking out of the building, and I noticed from outside, looking back inside, that he also had quickly got up and was heading towards the outside doors. I hopped into my car, waking up my girlfriend, and I told her I would explain in a minute. I put my car into reverse and whipped out of the spot. As I was shifting into drive, I looked up and saw the guy a few feet away, standing next to his old beat-down truck, literally staring me down. As I started to drive away, I stared directly back at him and saw him make this really creepy mime-like surprised look at me. I was very tired and confused, but I still don't know what this guy was planning at a rest stop in the middle of nowhere at 1 a.m. Or if the vending machine people had anything to do with it. But this is one of the only times I've ever experienced something like this and have felt in actual danger. If someone has any similar experiences or ideas of what this may have been, I would love to hear your story. Last week, a man approached me on my way out of work. I work in a big facility, so it's not strange that I don't know him. He started by complimenting me, but in a way that made me really uncomfortable. He was telling me things like how good I smell and I'm so beautiful. He watches me all the time. He said he wishes he could see me more often and wants to get to know me. To which I replied that I have a boyfriend and am not interested. He laughed at me and said that my boyfriend doesn't have to know. and he wants to take me for dinner. He then asked for my number, and he'd follow me right to my car by this point. There was no one else around, and I was starting to feel scared, as I've got some trauma centered around men and telling them no. I just wanted him to go away, so I unfortunately gave him the number. I didn't give a fake because he'd handed me the phone on the screen that you would type a number you're about to call. So I was scared he would test it. I had a panic attack in my car before I went home and hoped that would be the end of it and I'd block the number. All weekend, he didn't text, but I did get called by the same number 3 times. I don't know if it was his as he didn't give it to me. When I walked into work this morning, he appeared out of nowhere and started talking to me like we have this secret relationship or something. I don't know how he found out what time I start, because I've never seen him when I come in before. I don't think I can report it to HR because I'm stupid and haven't been able to actually tell him he's making me uncomfortable. I don't know if this will persist, but I'm scared to leave work alone now. When I was in college, I was out and about with my then boyfriend. We had gone to dinner, then went to Walmart to get some typical college food, so we would survive a Sunday in. I was dressed up in a casual dressy fit. We decided to split up while we shopped, split apart. Maybe to do quicker shopping, but I don't remember the exact reason why. I was wandering the grocery aisles when I noticed this girl who was about my age. In a friendly manner, we casually smiled at each other and continued on shopping. It didn't seem weird at first, but I kept noticing her in the same aisles as me, and a big, muscular man was never far behind us. Eventually, I texted my boyfriend and asked where he was, and continued on shopping. Next thing I know, the girl approaches me and says how she loves my jacket. I say, "Thanks, Maurice's," and try to move on. She stops me and says something along the lines of, "Hey, you look like you're my age and seem really nice. I just moved here for a new job and company my friends and I are starting," and tried to ask me questions about where I was from. I was vague and untrusting with what I said, noticing this isn't normal. Then she said, "I'm looking for more people like you, and I, too, work for our company. It's kind of a warehouse job, and I would love you to be one of our bookkeepers. You should give me your number." I said, "That is so nice of you to offer me a job, but I'm not a desk person and already have a job I love." She said, "That's a bummer. I thought we might work well together. Well, would you want to give me your number so we can hang out? I would love to have a friend who can show me around the city." I realized that I wasn't getting out of this situation until my boyfriend showed up, or I gave her my number. Eventually, I rattled off a fake number and said, "Hey, I will catch you later. I gotta go." Then I walked away, praying my boyfriend would be near so we could get the F out of there. While I was looking for him and trying to call him, the girl caught up to me and said, "I tried to call you, but it said the number was out of service." as I tried to come up with a quick excuse and say, "Maybe you typed it wrong." She saw that my iPhone was unlocked and in my hand. She quickly snatched it and called herself on it. I was so flustered and mad at her that I snatched my phone back right when my boyfriend came around the corner. He instantly recognized that something was up and said we needed to go. When the girl saw him approach me, she looked so disappointed to see him and stopped trying to interact. We ended up buying nothing and leaving. That night, we called our parents and the police. The police said they didn't think it was anything ill-intended, but I was sure it was probably trafficking. I was going to switch my phone number because I was so scared. I blocked them and turned off all location access on my phone. I was too scared to go anywhere alone for a while. I even told my coach so she'd know. A couple days later, I got a text from a random number. It was that girl. She sent me a picture of my best friend, who was out drinking downtown with some of her other friends. The text said, "I met your best friend. She gave me your number because I told her I was looking for new friends. She showed me a picture of you, and I said, 'What a coincidence. I met her the other day and lost her number when I got a new phone.'" About 2 minutes later, I got a text from my best friend that said, "I gave your number to a girl who wants to make friends around here and is looking for people to join her business. And since I moved this week, I thought of you." I freaked out. She was with her and told her to get away and not leave alone with her. I stayed up worried until my best friend got home. She said she was fine. Otherwise, I would have gone to pick her up. The next day, my best friend apologized and told me to block the number. My friend and her group tried to ditch her, but she kept showing up at the bars they were at. She said the girl was relentless and texted her all night, trying to get my friend to go hang out at her place. My best friend also said that when she asked about the business, the girl wouldn't give her many details other than that it was a warehouse somewhere, would pay her great, in town, and if she wanted a tour of it, she would take her. We never heard from this girl again. Today, I was listening to a podcast, and they mentioned different sex trafficking tactics. 2 were vague jobs, where they would pay you well, but needed you to come meet them to give you more information, and a new-to-town girl who desperately needs new friends. I have been thinking about this all morning, and am glad I felt uncomfortable and my friend didn't go with this girl. But I am mostly mad the cops ignored my concern and said it was nothing. I hope they wrote down the tip that night, but doubt they even did. Good day to all. I'm going to tell you about an event that happened to me quite recently. For practical and economic reasons, I use the taxi service. The fixed price, which costs me less than taking my vehicle, especially given the place where I live. As already said, an ultra-rural village, isolated from all cities, and where necessarily to go to the bank or go shopping, you have to hit 10 to 12 kilometers. In general, the taxi service I use is ultra-professional. Recent vehicles, clean, maintained, friendly driver, always a friendly random conversation. always on time, and almost always the same drivers. And one day, 3 to 4 weeks ago, I was entitled to a new driver until nothing special. And the same impeccable service. We are talking about rain and good weather. Nothing to complain about. 2 weeks ago, this gentleman, who already told me to call him by his first name, gave me his age, his nationality, information that came out of nowhere, and continued his conversation by explaining that he bought a connected printer, but can't get it to be recognized by his smartphone. I try to give him advice, and it stops there. And again, I'm there as a driver, in much too enthusiastic mood for my taste. I don't pay attention to it. He talks to me about his printer again, and blurts out to me, "You who work in this field, you can help me. I can't. The connection. If you want it, we can add ourselves on Messenger." Since we had arrived at my destination, I stammer an answer, something like, "I will think about it later." To know that this guy, I never talked to him about my work, because yes, I am a computer technician among other things. Afterwards, it is information that is easily found on Facebook, for example, even if my profile is not fully public. I ended up forgetting this moment, since I had to help a friend, mired in a complicated divorce where there was domestic violence. Suffice it to say that this divorce worried me a lot, and at this moment with the taxi, I ended up forgetting it. Except that I had to move and necessarily call a taxi. And you would have to understand, again, I got this driver. Barely getting in, a sudden urge to get out of the vehicle, he says hello to me by using my first name, asks me for news about my father's health, and even more playful humor. I specify that once again, I never mentioned my first name, nor mentioned my father to this driver. Suffice it to say that the road was heavy to do in a heavy silence. I do what I have to do, and in the store parking lot, I call the taxi center to order a taxi for the return. The gentleman replies that there is already a vehicle that has dropped me off, an old lady, that I have to meet her and notify her instantly so that she can pick me up. Arrived at the level of the driver, inevitably, always this driver with a big smile who supports, with me, my bags, by placing himself well behind me, against the trunk, by having a tactile gesture on my back, a kind of caress. It made my blood run cold. The latter asks me to get in front, because the rear doors have a problem unlocking. In other words, I just want to run away quickly. Very quickly. I get in front, telling myself, 10 kilometers by car, it will go quickly, and I try to hide my emotions. It was a mistake. The ultra-curious gentleman talking to me, asking questions, trying to direct my answers. Questions very focused on sex, increasingly scabrous, allusions, not to say things directly after a while. You finish compliment when you finish a man. Have you ever tried the Moroccan cigar? Allusion to the fact that I had bought cigars. Always with this awkward smile, touching limits, the crotch, tactile movements in my direction, while I was limited to sticking to the door, holding the wrist, and fixing the central unlocking button. Doors, which had no problems in fact, since the onboard computer did not indicate any warnings. And of course, instead of taking the shortest route, he took the longest, which reduces the time of the route from 10 to 15 minutes to almost 50 minutes in ultra-isolated, wooded paths. I responded vaguely to his comments and tried to make little jokes, hiding my growing anxiety. I don't know, and I don't want to know, what this guy was up to. Just arrived at my house, went down in fourth gear, took all my bags in one go, and I went home. And at home, in the hour that followed, this driver spoke to me on WhatsApp. I blocked him directly and didn't read it. After calming down, I contacted the taxi company, or I explained the situation. The gentleman just answered me, "Are you talking about why?" Or I answered in the affirmative. And he answered me in a very mafia intonation. I have no other images in mind to describe it. "Don't worry, we'll take care of it." On the one hand, I said to myself, I may not be the first to try, which is scary. And this will take care of it. I'll look to use another taxi service. It's still spinning my brain. Please forgive me, as English is not my first language. I hope my story made sense. And if you ever feel extremely uncomfortable in a taxi, immediately get out and order another one. This took place a couple years ago in Hollywood, Florida. I was in middle school at the time. Myself, my sister, and my mom both were on our front porch, unlocking the door after coming home from school. We noticed something was off right away because our alarm didn't go off, and my mom always made it a point to set the alarm before we left the house. Although that was weird, and we all noticed and commented about it, it was very possible that we just forgot to set it. Because of that possibility, we just ignored it and moved on. As we entered the house and were beginning to set our backpacks and other stuff down, I heard a drawer close in my bedroom. I thought I was just hearing things, so I looked at my mom and was about to ask her if she heard something. My mom looked at me at the same time, and her look of horror was enough for me to realize that she heard the same thing. My sister didn't seem to notice because she had earphones in. That sound and the fact that the alarm was off was enough for my mom to decide to get us out of there. She loudly said, "I want to show you guys something in the backyard," because she didn't want anyone in the house to know that we heard them. And that's why we were leaving the house. My sister looked confused, but I knew exactly why my mom said this. As we entered the backyard and shut the door behind us, we sped walked towards the alley behind our house. The only thing that separated us from it was a wooden fence. Once we reached the fence, we opened the gate and began to exit into the alley. I was the last to exit through the gate, and before I shut the gate, I looked at the house one last time. To my horror, I saw someone looking at me through our curtains. We called the police and they found no one and nothing was stolen. I never told anybody about what I saw. One Saturday morning, I decided to go to my local Goodwill. I am disabled and suffer from chronic pain. I use a cane on my good days and a wheelchair on my bad days. Luckily for me, this was a good day. I parked out front and got out of my car, and immediately noticed a man sitting at the far corner in front of the Goodwill. As I was walking into the Goodwill, he shouted, "Miss, do you have any extra time for me today?" I had never seen this man in my life and really did not want to engage with him. So I politely said, "No, sir, not today, I'm sorry," and continued walking. He shouted something else at me, but I couldn't make it out what he said and was afraid if I stopped and asked, then he would try to engage me in a conversation. I ignored him and continued walking. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw him begin to stand up. I walked faster and entered the Goodwill. Thinking I was in the clear, I began walking along the front of the store, just looking at the items. My heart dropped when I glanced through the front window and saw him walking briskly towards the entrance. I immediately thought that he might be following me. This has happened to me before at Goodwills. Every time, I've wound up in uncomfortable conversations where I have to continuously decline the advances of men I am really not interested in. It's gotten to the point where I wear a fake ring when I go out so I can say I'm married, because sometimes they accept that answer better than me simply not being interested. In that moment, the disability left my body because I picked up my cane and booked it to the nearby rack of ball gowns and hid behind them. Through the gaps, I observed him storming into the store and start to look through the aisles. I was scared because he looked angry, maybe because I ignored him. I didn't mean to be rude, but I thought I had made it clear in a polite way that I did not want to speak with him. I don't think that it's wrong of me to want to go thrifting without having to engage with random men. A kind woman nearby came up to the ball gowns where I was hiding and pretended to inspect them. She whispered, "Are you okay?" I said, "I think the man in the blue is looking for me." She said she thought so as well, and I asked her if any of the nearby dressing rooms were open. She pointed to the one that was, and when I saw that the man had his back turned, I dived underneath the door and locked it behind me. I called my boyfriend from the dressing room in tears and asked him to come to the store. Soon, I heard the knock at the door. The kind woman had gotten the manager. She told me that after the man looked through all the aisles, he walked out, grabbed his bag, and left the area. They closed the dressing room I was in and let me hide in it until my boyfriend arrived. Then, one of the male employees and my boyfriend walked me to my car. That was the end of it. Nothing really dramatic happened, and since we were in public, I don't think my life was in danger, but it was an unsettling experience. I hate to think of the possible confrontation we might have had if he'd found me. I'm just so thankful to the Goodwill employees and the kind woman who helped me that day. During the local 2021 elections in my area, I, then a 32 female, had a second job cleaning up around the exterior of the recreation center, which happened to be a voting location. Just take a second to imagine what a plethora of candidate advertising signs practically littering the street corner of a voting location can look like. It's significant to the story by the end. So, I was outside and at the furthest part of the parking lot, closer to the road than to the building and centered at the back, walking towards the entrance of the parking lot. I see a car pull out of a space, and my eyes immediately go to it, assuming it's going to leave the parking lot, considering it pulled out and was headed that way. But instead of turning to the exit/entrance, it turns towards me. The man driving stopped beside me and asked, "How old are you?" I did not expect that to be the first thing out of anyone's mouth, so I told him, old enough? My then boss later ridiculed me over the answer when I began to tell her what happened, which I found very disgraceful, considering customer service should never come before safety. She gave me one of those stories that basically paints uncomfortable and potentially unsafe exchanges with patrons as just part of the job. It's not and never should be seen that way. I was shaking the rest of the shift. The man then stated that he thought I looked like I should be in school or something. I told him I was older than that, making sure he could see I wasn't enjoying the conversation, and began trying to guess my age. "You got to be like 23, right?" Older than that." He acted shocked and told me to have a blessed one. Circled through one of the aisles of cars coming back down the aisle he was parked in before and parked towards the end in the direction I was headed. My heart started pounding, and I walked as slowly as possible, never taking my eyes off him. And in that moment, a cop came into the parking lot by chance and went to a different area of the lot. The man got out of the vehicle, either on the phone or pretending to be on the phone, and walked a single election sign down to the already covered corner, got back in his car, and left. There wasn't a doubt in my mind that man was looking to kidnap a girl. Considering leaving just one photocopied sign at the corner to fight with all the others made absolutely no sense. I should also note that I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, hypermobility type, and we characteristically tend to look a lot younger than we are. I tend to look roughly 10 to 15 years younger than I am. After this encounter, I began carrying pepper spray with me everywhere, considering this was an encounter close enough to have a conversation with the potential trafficker or stalker or pedo or a creep. I also began carrying a radio during my shifts at the rec. My boss told me I shouldn't have said what I said when I began telling her the story, and I told her he was circling the parking lot. She then told me to work in a different part of the area away from the road or lot because of that, and didn't even know the full story until she read the incident report a shift or so later. She very nonchalantly gave me the option to fill one out, and I just felt like I wasn't taken seriously. One of my coworkers, who wasn't my immediate supervisor, had me fill out an incident report, supported me, gave me the radio, and even became a friend. I'm still close with, even though neither of us work there anymore. Just felt weird that my female coworker or boss dismissed me, and my male coworker was genuinely concerned for me. Just sad she took it like it was something to just put up with, when my gut was literally screaming at me. We had just moved back to my home state, and my husband's birthday was coming up. I went to a local Dollar Tree to get balloons and a card, but that location didn't have helium for the balloons. I typed in the next available location in my maps and drove there. I wasn't familiar with the area, so when I arrived, and it was a sketchy part of town, I told myself to be quick and vigilant. I made note of all the cars around, and I parked as close to the front as I could. When I went inside, I made note of every person inside too. I always carry my knife and pepper spray. I had no bad vibes, no creeps lingering. Thought I was in the clear. I got my balloons and card within 5 minutes. Nobody new entered the store. I get outside and no cars have changed in the parking lot. I pack the balloons in my car, get in, lock my doors by default. Right as I turn on my engine, and a car out of nowhere speeds up and blocks the whole front end of my car at an angle. The guy starts motioning me to roll down my window. I ignored him and tried to plan my escape, but a car was on my right, and another car was backing out, so I couldn't reverse. The guy kept pulling closer at an angle to box me in, and kept throwing hand gestures to roll my window down, when suddenly the car to the right moved. I whipped my wheel to the right as fast as I could and pulled out inches from scraping my car on the creep's car. I only lived 10 minutes or so away, so I drove around for at least 45 minutes, taking all different roads to be certain I wasn't followed before finally going home. My adrenaline was so high. I really was surprised because I had no idea where that car came from. And that, dear listeners, is the end of these true creepy encounters. If you are asleep, I hope Slumberland is treating you kindly. If you are awake, I hope you have enjoyed this collection. With that being said, until next time, I will read to you soon. Have yourself a good morning, a good afternoon, or a good night.